The flashing red and blue lights cut through the early evening sky like sharp blades. I stood on my porch, wiping the dirt from my hands after finishing the last screw on my new "No Trespassing" sign. My heart raced as the police cruiser stopped in front of my gate, dust rising behind it. Karen, the self-appointed queen of our so-called neighborhood HOA, was already standing there, arms folded, lips pursed so tight it looked like she was trying to swallow her anger. "Officer, that's him!" she shouted, pointing at me like I'd just robbed a bank. "He's putting up illegal signs on our property." The officer stepped out, calm but firm. "Sir," he said, "we got a report that you're threatening neighbors with signs. Mind telling me what's going on here?" Before I could answer, Karen jumped in. "This man thinks he's above the rules. This land belongs to the HOA. I cut her off, still keeping my cool. "Actually, officer, she's standing on my property right now." Karen froze. The officer turned toward her slowly. "Ma'am, are you sure this is HOA property?" Her eyes darted between the sign, the fence, and me. It used to be," she stammered, but her voice didn't sound so confident anymore. The officer raised an eyebrow. "Maybe we should take a look at the property lines before making any assumptions." That's when Karen's face turned red as a fire truck. I could see her jaw tighten as if she wanted to argue, but the officer's calm tone stopped her. I stood there, the quiet hum of the evening broken only by the chirp of crickets and the soft click of the police radio. The truth was about to come out, and it wasn't going to look good for Karen. But what happened next changed everything. Earlier that week, I had finally had enough. For months, Karen and her little HOA crew had been crossing the invisible line between neighborly concern and complete invasion of privacy. It started small. They'd accidentally walk through my yard to check my grass height. Then they started telling me my tool shed didn't match the aesthetic standards of the neighborhood, even though my property technically wasn't under the HOA's control. The final straw came when I caught Karen's dog digging up my flower bed while she stood there pretending to look for her cat. I told her nicely, 3 times, to stop walking through my yard. She just smiled that tight, fake smile of hers and said, "You'll understand once you join the HOA, dear. We keep things in order around here." That's when I decided to install a proper fence and put up a clear "No Trespassing" sign. It wasn't rude. It wasn't flashy. Just a plain metal sign screwed into a post by my driveway. But to Karen, it must have been the ultimate act of rebellion. The day I started working on it, I noticed her peeking through her curtains. Every time I looked up, her blinds would snap shut. By the time I hammered in the last nail, she was already marching toward me, her phone in her hand like a weapon. "You can't put that there," she barked. "Why not?" I asked. "Because it's HOA property," she snapped. "We have rules about signage. You didn't ask for permission." I wiped my hands on my jeans. "Permission? For a sign on my land?" That's when she smirked. "You think this is your land? Oh, honey, you'll learn how things work around here soon enough." And that was it. She stormed off, muttering something about calling the board and taking action. I didn't think much of it, but the next day, I woke up to find a bright orange violation notice taped to my mailbox, signed by Karen herself. It read, "Unauthorized signage on HOA property. Remove immediately or face penalties." I couldn't help but laugh. She really thought her word was law. Still, I left the sign where it was. I wasn't breaking any laws, and deep down I knew something she didn't: the official survey map. I'd kept a copy from when I bought the property, and it clearly showed that the area where she loved to stand and gossip with her friends was actually on my side of the boundary. I knew one day she'd push it too far. And that day came faster than I thought. It was a Saturday afternoon. The sun was setting behind the hills, and I was planting some bushes near the fence when I heard shouting from down the road. Karen's voice echoed like a siren. "You can't just do whatever you want." I turned to see her dragging 2 other HOA members behind her, phones out, recording everything. "We're documenting this for the board," one of them said. "Great," I said. "Make sure you get my good side." Karen's eyes narrowed. "You think you're funny? Well, I've already called the cops. Let's see how funny it is when you have to explain this to them." My stomach dropped for a moment. Not because I was scared, but because I knew exactly how this would play out. And sure enough, 10 minutes later, the police car pulled up. The moment the officer stepped out and Karen started shouting about HOA authority, I knew things were about to get interesting. But as the officer took a step closer to the fence, and to the no trespassing sign she claimed was illegal, something unexpected happened. He looked down, then up, then back at her. "Ma'am," he said, pointing at the ground. "You're aware you're standing on his side of the property line, right?" Karen froze, her mouth slightly open. The tension in the air was so thick even the wind seemed to stop blowing. I could see the other HOA members whispering behind her, their confidence starting to fade. And that's when Karen said something that made my jaw drop. She took a deep breath and snapped, "That line doesn't matter. This whole area belongs to the HOA. The officer blinked, his hand resting on his belt. "You sure about that, ma'am?" Because what happened next would prove once and for all who the land really belonged to. "Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. We're just getting started, and trust me, you won't believe what happens in Chapter 2. The air was thick with tension. You could almost hear the crickets stop chirping as if nature itself was waiting to see what would happen next. Karen stood with her arms crossed, clutching her phone like a badge of power. Her red blouse shimmered in the fading sunlight, matching the color creeping up her neck. The officer, calm and methodical, took a few careful steps closer to the no trespassing sign that had started all this chaos. "Ma'am," he said again, voice steady, "if you're claiming this is HOA property, I'll need to see some documentation." Karen blinked. "Documentation? I don't carry that around. But the HOA has records." The officer nodded. "All right, and you—" He turned to me. "You're saying this is your private property?" "Yes, sir," I said, reaching into my back pocket. "And I've got proof." I unfolded a few slightly wrinkled papers, copies of the original survey map I'd kept since buying the land 5 years earlier. The officer took them, adjusted his sunglasses, and began studying the lines. Karen huffed. "Oh, please. Anyone can print a fake map from the internet." I smiled. "You're welcome to call the county office if you'd like. They'll confirm it." The officer shot her a look that made even Karen take a step back. "That's a good idea, ma'am. I'll do that right now." He turned back toward his car, radioing dispatch. Karen started pacing, muttering under her breath about entitled newcomers and people who don't respect the rules. The 2 other HOA members stayed quiet, their faces pale and uneasy. When the officer returned, he looked at me first, then at Karen. "Well, ma'am," he began, "the county confirms the property line matches his survey. The area where we're standing is legally part of his land." Karen blinked rapidly, as if she didn't understand the words. "That can't be right," she blurted. "The HOA map shows this entire section as community space." The officer tilted his head. "Did you personally verify that with the county?" Karen froze again. "Well, no, but the board—" "Ma'am," the officer interrupted gently. "You can't enforce HOA rules on land you don't own. That's trespassing." Her mouth dropped open. "Trespassing?" she echoed, her voice shaking. "I live here. This is my neighborhood." The officer crossed his arms. "That may be true, but right now you're standing on someone else's private property after being told to leave. And you've called the police under false pretenses." The color drained from her face. The 2 HOA members whispered frantically behind her, one of them saying, "Karen, let's just go." But Karen wasn't done. Not yet. The week before the sign, it all started with my dog, Max. He's a big golden retriever, friendly as can be. But one day he came running into the yard barking like he'd seen a ghost. When I followed him, I found a half-eaten sandwich on my porch. And next to it, a small note that read, "No feeding animals outside. HOA Rule, number 23. The problem? I wasn't even part of the HOA. My land sat next to their neighborhood, just far enough out that it wasn't included when the subdivision was formed years ago. Still, Karen insisted otherwise. She came over one morning while I was fixing the fence. "You need to take down that doghouse," she said matter-of-factly. "It's not in compliance." "Compliance with what?" I asked. "The HOA guidelines, of course," she replied, smiling like she'd just handed me a gift. "You'll be fined if you don't." I couldn't help but laugh. "Karen, my property isn't under your HOA." She tilted her head. "That's what everyone thinks at first. But we've expanded our coverage. This area is community managed now." That was a lie, but it was typical Karen. A few days later, I caught her taking photos of my backyard. I stepped outside and called, "Can I help you?" She jumped, then said, "Just documenting violations," and walked off. That night, I decided it was time to put an end to it. I ordered a metal "No Trespassing" private property sign online. Big, bold, clear letters. The next morning, I started digging the post hole near my fence. As soon as I did, Karen appeared, like she had been waiting behind her blinds all day. "You can't put that there," she said sharply. "It's unsightly. We have rules about sign placement." I looked up. "Karen, it's my land." Her face twisted into that smug grin I'd grown to know too well. "We'll see about that," she said, pulling out her phone. I didn't realize then that "we'll see" meant she was going to involve the police. Back to the present, Karen stood frozen in front of the officer, her face turning from red to pale to something in between. "I didn't mean any harm," she said finally, her voice trembling now. "I was just trying to keep the neighborhood looking nice." The officer sighed. "Ma'am, you can't make assumptions about property ownership. Next time, check your facts before calling law enforcement." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then she turned to me, her voice rising again. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You can't just put up signs and act like you're above everyone else." Before I could answer, the officer stepped between us. "That's enough. You've made your report, and it was unfounded. I suggest you leave." Karen's jaw clenched, but she backed away slowly. The other HOA members followed, whispering to her in nervous tones. As the police car drove off, I leaned on my fence and looked out at the fading sun. The "No Trespassing" sign glowed orange in the light, standing tall and proud. I thought it was over. I thought she'd finally learned her lesson. But the next morning, I woke up to find something strange on my lawn. A white envelope. No stamp. No return address. Just my name scrawled across it in messy handwriting. Inside, a single note read, "You may have won this round, but the HOA always wins." And attached to it was a photo of my backyard, taken in the middle of the night. I stared at the picture, my heart pounding. Someone had been on my property again. But was it Karen? Or someone else? Because what happened next would prove that this no trespassing battle was far from over. That picture haunted me all day. The grainy image showed my backyard, taken from an angle that could only be seen if someone had walked past the fence and into my property. The timestamp in the corner showed it was taken at 2:47 a.m. I tried to brush it off at first. Maybe it was just Karen trying to scare me. Maybe she thought leaving that note would make me take down the "No Trespassing" sign. But something about it felt off. The angle, the darkness, the fact that whoever took it got close enough to my shed to see my garden tools. That wasn't just Karen being nosy. That was trespassing, plain and simple. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. That's what she would have done. I told myself I'd install motion lights later in the week. I even bought a small security camera online. But before it arrived, things took a strange turn. The less extreme event that afternoon, I was working on trimming the hedge near my gate when I saw a familiar car roll up. Karen's shiny white SUV. The window rolled down halfway, and she peeked out, wearing those oversized sunglasses she thought made her look important. "Good morning," she said in a voice that was way too sweet. "Lovely day, isn't it?" I stared at her, suspicious. "What do you want, Karen?" "Oh, nothing," she said quickly, pretending to check her nails. "I just wanted to apologize for the misunderstanding with the police." I raised an eyebrow. "Apologize?" She nodded. "Yes, well, it seems there was a small mix-up about the boundary lines. The HOA board and I reviewed the documents, and you were right. Technically, that fence is on your land." "Technically?" I repeated. She smiled again, tight-lipped. "Well, you know how these things go. Property lines are tricky, but we like to keep good relations with our neighbors, so I'm here extending an olive branch." I didn't buy it for a second. Karen never apologized unless there was something in it for her. "All right," I said, playing along. "Apology accepted." Her eyes flicked toward the sign. "So any chance you'll take that down? It makes the street look unwelcoming." I smiled. "No chance." The smile faded from her face. "You really should reconsider. People might get the wrong idea about you." I leaned on the fence and said softly, "I think they already have." Her lips pressed together. Without another word, she rolled up her window and drove off, tires crunching on the gravel. I thought that was the end of it. But that night, something woke me up. The next extreme event. It was around 3 a.m. when I heard the first sound, a faint clink near the back gate. Max, my dog, started growling low in his throat. I reached for my flashlight and looked out the window, but I didn't see anything. Then another noise, a metal scrape, like someone trying to open something. I slipped on my shoes and crept out the back door, flashlight in hand. The air was cold and still, the kind of quiet that makes every small sound echo twice as loud. Max barked once, sharp and loud. That's when I saw it. A shadow moving near the shed. "Hey!" I shouted. "Who's out there?" The figure froze. I shone the light, and for a split second, I saw a flash of red fabric. Karen's red blouse. She turned and ran, her shoes crunching against the gravel as she sprinted toward the road. "Karen!" I yelled, my heart pounding. "What are you doing on my property?" But she didn't answer. By the time I reached the fence, she was gone, her SUV headlights flashing in the distance as she sped away. I stood there in disbelief. What had she been doing near my shed at 3 a.m.? When I went to check, I noticed something strange. The no trespassing sign, the one that started it all, was bent sideways. Someone had tried to rip it out of the ground. I felt anger boiling up inside me. This wasn't just a petty neighborhood argument anymore. This was harassment. The next morning, I called the police. The same officer from before came by, his notebook in hand. "You're saying you saw her on your property last night?" he asked. "Yes," I said firmly. "Around 3 in the morning. She ran when I called out." He nodded slowly. "Any cameras?" "Not yet, but I ordered one. It should be here tomorrow." He sighed. "All right, we'll file a report for trespassing. But without footage, it's your word against hers." Of course it was. That's exactly what Karen was counting on, but I wasn't about to let it slide. That evening, I installed the new security camera facing the gate and made sure the motion lights were working. If she came back, I'd have proof. For a few nights, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Then, one Wednesday night, the motion light flicked on at 2:43 a.m. Max started barking again. When I checked the camera feed on my phone, I couldn't believe what I saw. Karen wasn't alone this time. There were 3 people. One of them holding a clipboard, another carrying a measuring tape, and Karen standing there pointing at my shed like a general leading an army. I didn't know what they were planning. But whatever it wasn't good. Were they trying to claim my property again? Were they plotting something to get me fined or forced to move? All I knew was that the game had changed. And the next morning, when I found an official-looking notice pinned to my gate, I realized just how far Karen was willing to go to prove her point. The paper on my gate fluttered in the cool morning breeze. It was thick, printed on fancy white paper, with an HOA logo at the top. The kind of letter meant to scare you before you even read a single line. I pulled it off and read aloud, my hands trembling with disbelief. Notice of code violation. Unauthorized structure and signage in restricted community zone. Failure to comply within 72 hours will result in legal action by the Homeowners Association. Below it was a signature I knew all too well, Karen's. She had even stamped it with the HOA's fake official seal. I laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, but because the sheer nerve of it was unbelievable. She had been caught trespassing, warned by police, and still had the guts to slap a violation notice on my gate. Property that wasn't even under her authority. That morning I took the letter straight to the local county office. The clerk behind the counter, an older man named Mr. Davis, looked at it and frowned. "This doesn't look official," he said. "There's no county code number. HOA can't issue citations on private land." "I figured," I said. "Can I get something in writing to prove that?" He chuckled, stamping a document with a loud thunk. "This should do the trick." He handed me a printed statement verifying that my property was outside the HOA boundary and that any attempt to enforce HOA rules here was unauthorized. I smiled. "Thanks, Mr. Davis. You might have just saved me a whole lot of trouble." He winked. "Son, sounds like trouble already found you. Be careful." When I got home, Karen was standing in her driveway, chatting loudly with 2 board members. I walked right up to her with the paper in hand. "Hey, Karen," I called. "You might want to take a look at this." She turned, still holding her phone, probably mid-rant. "What do you want?" she snapped. I handed her the county document. This says you have no authority over my property, so next time you or your board try to hang anything on my gate, it'll be considered harassment. Her smile vanished. You went behind the HOAs back to the county? Behind? I said, raising an eyebrow. It's my land, Karen. I don't report to you. The two board members exchanged nervous glances. One of them mumbled, Karen, maybe we should. But Karen cut him off. No. He's manipulating you with fake papers. The HOA has a claim on that easement. I'll prove it. Great, I said, then prove it, with real documents this time. She glared at me, her jaw tight, and stormed back toward her SUV. As she opened the door, she muttered just loud enough for me to hear. You'll regret embarrassing me like this. I didn't reply. I just turned and walked back toward my porch, but a chill ran down my spine. There was something in her tone that didn't sound like anger. It sounded like a promise. That night, I barely slept. The motion light flicked on twice, but when I checked the camera feed, there was nothing there. Just the wind blowing through the trees. The next morning, I found muddy footprints near my shed again. The prints were smaller than before, maybe from a child or a woman's shoe. But the strange thing was, they didn't lead in from the road, they led out. Someone had been hiding in my yard. I checked the footage again, scanning through the night. Around 2:18 a.m., the motion light blinked on, and for a split second the camera caught something. A face. Pale. Close to the lens. Then static. The feed resumed 30 seconds later, clear again, but whoever it was had vanished. My stomach tightened. Karen's obsession had reached a dangerous level. This wasn't just HOA nonsense anymore. This was stalking. I printed the photo from the camera and went straight to the sheriff's office. The same officer who'd been here before recognized me immediately. You again? He said with a tired smile. What happened this time? I handed him the printout. Someone was on my property again last night. Look at this. He squinted at the image. That's definitely a person. Hard to tell who. I hesitated. I think it's Karen. He nodded slowly. We'll file another report and check the surrounding houses for cameras that might have caught something. You sure she's the only one involved? I shook my head. Last time there were more people with her. They had measuring tapes and clipboards. The officer sighed. Sounds like she's trying to make a case. Probably wants to prove the HOA owns part of your land. I've seen this kind of thing before. Power-hungry board members trying to scare people into compliance. So what do I do? I asked. Keep your cameras rolling, he said. And if anyone steps foot past that fence again, call us immediately. When I got home, I reinforced the gate with a new padlock and added another motion light above the driveway. For a few days, things calmed down. Karen's car didn't pass by, her little patrols stopped, and the HOA bulletin board stayed blank. But peace never lasts long with Karen around. One Thursday morning, I woke to the sound of heavy machinery outside. At first, I thought it was construction, but when I looked through the window, my blood ran cold. A small excavator was parked near the property line, right on the stretch of dirt between my fence and the HOA park area. Karen stood nearby in a bright orange vest, barking orders like she was running a city crew. Two men were marking the ground with orange spray paint. One of them waved a folded map. I ran outside. Hey, what are you doing? Karen turned with that same smug grin. We're reclaiming HOA land. You've been encroaching for years. Reclaiming? Are you serious? You can't dig here? This is my property. She raised her clipboard proudly. We have new documentation from a private surveyor. This land belongs to the HOA. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You hired your own surveyor? Of course, she said, chin lifted. And when the county sees these results, they'll understand who's really been trespassing. The man driving the excavator looked uneasy. Ma'am, are you sure about this? I don't want to get in trouble. Karen waved her hand. You're fine. Just start where I marked. I stepped in front of the machine. You're not touching an inch of dirt here until I see those papers. Karen glared. Move, or I'll have the police remove you. For a second we stood there, me covered in dust, her in her spotless vest, the sun beating down on both of us. The driver hesitated, waiting for someone to give the word. Then, from down the road, I saw flashing lights again. The same officer. He stepped out of his cruiser, rubbing his temple like he couldn't believe he was back here. What's going on this time? He asked. Karen rushed forward. "Officer, this man is obstructing HOA maintenance work." I held up the county document. "She's trying to dig on my property again." The officer sighed, taking the papers from both of us. He studied them, his brow furrowing deeper and deeper. After a long moment, he said, "Karen, you need to stop." She blinked. "Stop? Why?" "Because if you dig one more inch into this land, you're going to be charged with property damage and trespassing." Her mouth fell open. "That's ridiculous. I'm protecting the community." The officer's tone hardened. "You're harassing a private citizen. If this continues, we'll escalate it further." Karen's face turned beet red. She looked at me like she wanted to scream, but no words came out. And then, in one impulsive move, she did something I never saw coming. She grabbed the "No Trespassing" sign from the ground, ripped it free, and threw it straight into the ditch. The officer froze. So did I. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "that's vandalism. I think we're done talking." As he reached for his radio, Karen's expression changed from rage to panic. And just like that, the story took a turn no one expected. Karen's face went from red to ghostly pale as the officer spoke into his radio. You could tell she realized what she had just done, but it was too late. Her defiance had finally crossed the line into something the law couldn't ignore. "Dispatch, this is Officer Daniels," he said calmly. "Requesting a second unit for documentation and witness statement. Possible property damage and harassment case." Karen gasped. "Wait, what? You're arresting me?" The officer didn't answer immediately. He just motioned for her to step aside as he walked toward the torn-up "No Trespassing" sign. It lay half buried in the ditch, the post twisted from where she'd ripped it out. He crouched, ran his hand over the broken metal, and shook his head. "You really shouldn't have done that, ma'am." Karen's lips quivered. I was just trying to protect the neighborhood. He's the one making trouble." He turned to her slowly. "Ma'am, I've been out here 3 times. Each time it's been because of you. You've called the police for fake reports, trespassed at night, and now you've damaged private property." She pointed at me, desperate. "He's lying. He set me up. He's been trying to make me look crazy." I didn't even respond. There was nothing to say. The officer looked at me, then back at her. "Ma'am, I'm giving you one last chance to calm down before this escalates further. You can either leave peacefully and let the county handle this, or I can take you in for questioning right now." For a moment, Karen didn't move. Her jaw trembled, her hands shaking as she clutched her clipboard. Behind her, the 2 HOA board members looked like they wanted to disappear. The excavator driver had already shut off his engine and was quietly backing the machine away. Then suddenly she dropped the clipboard, her voice cracking. Fine, I'll leave. But this isn't over. He's going to regret this." She stormed off toward her SUV, yanking open the door so hard it slammed against the frame. Gravel kicked up under her tires as she sped down the street, disappearing around the corner. The officer sighed, rubbing his forehead. "I swear, I need a raise for this neighborhood." I laughed quietly, though it was more out of exhaustion than amusement. He turned to me. "You all right?" "Yeah," I said. "Just tired of all this nonsense. I didn't move out here to start a war." He nodded. "I get that. I'll file this report with the county and they'll have a record of her vandalism. If she comes back, call us immediately. We'll get a restraining order if needed." "Appreciate it," I said. After he left, the quiet felt heavier than usual. The sign lay bent and broken in the dirt, and even though I knew I could replace it, something about seeing it destroyed made me feel defeated. That sign had been a symbol of peace, of boundaries, and now it was just another casualty in Karen's endless crusade. But that night, as I sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the trees, I noticed something strange. Across the street, where Karen's house stood dark and silent, her curtains were open. For the first time in weeks, the place looked empty. No lights, no movement, nothing. I figured maybe she'd gone to cool off somewhere, maybe even face the HOA board after her meltdown. But then the next morning, I got a knock on my door. It wasn't the police this time. It was one of Karen's board members, a short, nervous-looking man named Glenn. He was holding a folder and looked like he hadn't slept all night. "Can I talk to you?" he asked quietly. "Sure," I said, motioning for him to step onto the porch. He looked around nervously before speaking. Look, I just want to apologize on behalf of the HOA. Things got out of hand. I crossed my arms. That's one way to put it. He nodded. Karen, she's been difficult lately. Ever since her husband left, she's been taking things out on everyone. The HOA gave her way too much power. We thought it was harmless at first, but, well, you've seen what happened. I stayed quiet. Glenn opened the folder and handed me a document. This is the official boundary map from when the community was built. I pulled it from the county records myself this morning. You're right. Your land's completely outside HOA jurisdiction. I looked at the paper and saw the thick black lines marking my property. Glenn's finger traced the edge. She knew, he said softly. Karen knew this months ago. She just didn't care. My stomach turned. She knew? He nodded, shame coloring his face. She said if she ignored it long enough, she could make everyone believe it was part of the HOA. She thought if you gave in, others would follow her rules too. So it was about control, I said quietly. Exactly, Glenn replied. But after today, the board's had enough. We're calling a meeting to vote her out. I raised an eyebrow. Can you even do that? He gave a small smile. Oh, we can. And we will. He turned to leave, but before he did, he paused. One more thing, he said. If I were you, I'd check your mailbox. He walked off before I could ask what he meant. Confused, I walked down the driveway. The mailbox door hung slightly open. Inside was another envelope. This one plain white, no handwriting, just sealed tight. I opened it slowly. Inside was a small flash drive and a single note that read, "You think you've won, but you don't know the whole story. Watch this." I stared at it for a long moment, unsure whether to plug it in or throw it straight into the trash. Max barked behind me, and I looked back toward the empty street. The air was still, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Who had left the envelope? Was it Karen? Or someone else from the HOA? Either way, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not yet. And whatever was on that flash drive was going to change everything I thought I knew about Karen, the HOA, and my own land. I turned the small flash drive over in my hand a few times, its silver edge glinting in the sunlight. It didn't look threatening, just an ordinary thumb drive. But something about it made my stomach twist. I could hear Max pawing at the door behind me, whining softly, like he knew something wasn't right. I slipped it into my pocket and went inside. For a long time, I just stood there at the kitchen table staring at my laptop. I knew I shouldn't plug in a strange drive. Every sensible part of me said it could be a virus, or a trick, or just another way for Karen to mess with me. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. Finally, I took a deep breath, sat down, and inserted the drive. At first, nothing happened. Then a single video file appeared on the screen. No title, no name, just a date. Cam 0402 MP4. I clicked it. The screen flickered for a moment before showing grainy black and white footage. It looked like a security camera recording. I saw my own property, my shed, my fence, even the no trespassing sign before it was ripped out. The timestamp was 2 weeks old. Then a figure appeared. Karen. She crept through the bushes, glancing over her shoulder every few seconds. The video had no sound, but I could see her mouth moving as if talking to herself. She walked around my yard, holding what looked like a measuring tape and a notebook. Then, out of nowhere, she knelt by the shed and started digging. At first, I thought maybe she was trying to damage something, but then she reached into the dirt and pulled something out, something small and wrapped in plastic. She looked around quickly, wiped it off, and stuffed it into her bag before sneaking back toward the fence. My heart was pounding. What had she buried there? I fast-forwarded the video. The screen jumped to the next night. Same time, same spot. Only this time she wasn't alone. A man in dark clothes followed her in. They argued. He gestured angrily toward the shed, and she pointed toward my house. Then he walked off, leaving her standing there alone. I paused the video, leaning back in my chair. None of it made sense. Karen had always been overbearing, controlling, and annoying. But this? Sneaking onto my land in the middle of the night, digging something up, meeting some strange man. I needed answers. I grabbed a shovel and headed outside. The sun was setting, painting the yard in orange and gold. I went straight to the spot behind the shed, the one I'd seen in the video. The soil looked slightly disturbed, just enough to notice if you were looking closely. I started digging. After about a minute, my shovel hit something hard. My pulse quickened. I knelt down and brushed away the dirt until I saw a corner of black plastic. I pulled it out. It was a small waterproof pouch. Inside was an old brown envelope sealed with tape. When I opened it, I froze. It was full of photographs, dozens of them, all of me. Photos of me mowing the lawn, fixing the fence, sitting on my porch, walking my dog. Some were taken from across the street. Others were from angles that could only have been shot from my own yard. My mouth went dry. At the bottom of the envelope there was a folded piece of paper. I unfolded it slowly. Property under observation. Subject refuses to comply. Evidence to be submitted to board after full report. It was written in Karen's handwriting. But what report? Why was she collecting evidence? I heard a crunch behind me, footsteps on gravel. I turned around fast, shovel still in hand. It was Glenn. "Whoa," he said, raising his hands. "Easy there." "What are you doing here?" I demanded. He looked uneasy. "I came to warn you. Karen's gone off the deep end." I frowned. "Gone? What do you mean?" He hesitated. "After the incident with the officer, she didn't show up to the board meeting. Then this morning she sent out a message claiming she has proof that you're a threat to the neighborhood. She said she's taking everything to the county herself." I showed him the photos. His face went pale. "Good Lord, she's been spying on you?" "Looks that way." He shook his head slowly. "She told us you were building something dangerous out here. That's why she kept sneaking around. She said she had to document violations for safety. We didn't believe her, but—" I interrupted. "Who was the man with her in the video?" Glenn looked confused. "What man?" I opened my laptop and played the part of the footage where Karen met with him. Glenn leaned closer, squinting. After a few seconds, his eyes widened. "That's her cousin Dale," he said. "He works for a private construction company. He helped the HOA build that walking path last year. But what would he be doing out here?" "I don't know," I said. "But it looks like she was hiding something." Glenn rubbed his temples. "This is bad. If she's dragging family into this, she's planning something big." Just then, Max started barking again, loud and frantic. I looked toward the driveway and saw headlights slowly creeping down the road. A white SUV stopped just short of my gate. Karen. Even from that distance, I could see her silhouette sitting behind the wheel. She didn't move. She didn't get out. She just sat there, watching. I grabbed my phone and started recording. Glenn whispered, "What is she doing?" Before I could answer, the SUV door opened. Karen stepped out, holding something shiny in her hand. It wasn't her phone. It was a folder. She placed it on top of my mailbox, turned around, and got back in the car. Then she drove away slowly, her taillights fading into the distance. I waited a few minutes before walking over. The folder was labeled, Evidence, HOA Property Claim. I opened it right there under the porch light. Inside were more papers, blueprints, maps, and what looked like official documents from the county. Only when I looked closer I realized they were all fake. Poorly edited, dates mismatched, even the county seal looked wrong. She had forged everything. "She's really lost it," Glenn muttered. "If the HOA sees this, they'll think she's gone completely mad." I looked at him. "Glenn, what if she already sent copies somewhere else?" He swallowed hard. "Then we're both in trouble." The night felt heavier somehow, like the world itself was holding its breath. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. I glanced back at my house, then at the fake documents in my hand. There was something more here, something Karen was hiding beneath all this HOA nonsense. And whatever it was, I was starting to think it wasn't just about land anymore. I barely slept that night. Every sound outside felt louder, heavier. The rustle of branches, the creak of the fence, even Max's soft growls near the door. My mind kept replaying what I'd seen on the video. Karen sneaking around with her cousin, digging in the dirt, pulling something from the ground. What could she have buried? What was she so desperate to hide or recover? The next morning I brewed some coffee and sat on the porch, staring at the folder she'd left. The fake documents were sloppy, wrong seals, mismatched dates. But the more I looked at them, the more I noticed something else. Each page had a faint watermark in the background, almost invisible unless you held it up to the light. It wasn't the HOA logo. It was a company name. Redstone Development Group. That name made my stomach drop. Redstone was a local construction company known for buying up land, rezoning it, and turning small neighborhoods into shopping plazas and luxury condos. There had been rumors they wanted to expand near our community, but no one took them seriously. I looked back at the spot behind my shed, the one Karen had been digging in. If she had been meeting her cousin, and her cousin worked for a contractor, was she trying to sell my land? I didn't want to believe it. But the pieces were starting to fit. I called Glenn. "You still have Karen's cousin's number?" He hesitated. "Dale? Yeah, why? Can you text it to me?" He did. I called Dale immediately. The line rang twice before a gruff voice answered. "Hello? Dale, this is Ben, the guy Karen's been harassing about property lines." Silence. Then, "Oh, you." "Yeah, me. Look, I saw you on camera at my place a few weeks ago. I need to know what's going on." He sighed heavily. "I shouldn't be talking about this." "You don't have to tell me everything," I said. "Just tell me if Karen was working with Redstone Development." He paused for a long time. I could hear wind on the other end of the line like he was outside pacing. "Listen," he said finally. "She reached out to me about 6 months ago. Said she had a section of land that wasn't properly registered. Thought she could get it rezoned and sold quietly. She wanted me to run some preliminary surveys for Redstone without it going through the county." I felt my heart drop. "My land? I didn't know it was yours at the time," he said quickly. "She told me it was abandoned space behind the HOA trail. Said the owner didn't maintain it, so it was fair game for reclamation." "Reclamation?" I said through clenched teeth. He sighed again. "Look, she's been obsessed with that patch of dirt. Something about an easement that never got recorded. She thought if she could make it look like HOA property, she could sell the rights to Redstone for a community center deal." I rubbed my forehead. "So all this, the fake maps, the police calls, the signs, it was to push me off my own property?" "Exactly," he said. "She wanted to scare you into backing down. I told her it wasn't legal, but she said she'd handle it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Karen wasn't just a power-hungry neighbor. She was trying to profit off my land. "Where is she now?" I asked. He hesitated. "I don't know. Last I heard, she was supposed to meet someone from Redstone 2 days ago, but she never showed." After I hung up, I called Glenn again and told him everything. He sounded shaken. "She was trying to sell part of your property to Redstone. That's fraud. The HOA is going to go nuclear when they find out." "I'm not waiting for them," I said. "I'm calling the county and showing them everything." But before I could, something strange happened. That evening, around sunset, I noticed an SUV parked down the road. Not Karen's white one, a dark gray one with tinted windows. It didn't move. No one got out. It just sat there, idling quietly. I watched from my porch for a while. Then, deciding I'd had enough of being watched, I walked toward it. As I got closer, the driver's window rolled down just a crack. A man's voice said, "Mr. Walker?" "Who's asking?" I said. He held up a badge, County Inspector, Property Affairs Division. "I received a notice of complaint filed under your name and another under the HOA. We're investigating a potential land fraud claim involving Redstone Development." Finally, some progress. "You're in the right place," I said. "Follow me." I led him to my porch, showed him the fake documents, the video footage, and the folder Karen had dropped off. He examined everything carefully, his brow furrowing deeper with each page. "This is serious," he said. "Redstone's under state review already for boundary manipulation cases. If your neighbor was working with them, that's a major violation." He turned one of the documents over and tapped his pen. "This signature here, D. Morton, that's one of their project leads. I'll need to take this for evidence." He packed everything into an envelope, then handed me his card. "If Karen contacts you again, call me directly. Don't confront her. She's likely scared and unpredictable now that she's caught." After he left, the night fell quiet again. Too quiet. I sat outside with Max at my feet, listening to the hum of crickets and the far-off sound of frogs by the pond. For a few hours, I almost felt peace again. Then, just after midnight, I heard a loud crash. I ran to the back window and froze. The shed door was wide open, splintered, hanging crooked on its hinges. Someone had broken it open. I grabbed my flashlight and rushed out. The air was cool and damp, my breath fogging in front of me. I swung the light around. There were muddy footprints leading straight into the shed. Inside, the place was a mess. Boxes toppled over, tools scattered, shelves knocked down. It looked like someone had been searching for something. And there, on the dirt floor near the corner, was a small black bag. It wasn't mine. I crouched down and unzipped it. Inside were more papers, official-looking documents, the real ones this time. Property records, survey certificates, and at the very bottom, a redstone contract. But this time, the signature wasn't just Karen's. It was also signed by someone on the HOA board. I stared at the name, my stomach churning. Glenn. For a long moment, I just stood there in the dark shed, the flashlight trembling in my hand as the beam lit up Glenn's name printed neatly under a bold signature line, Glenn Marshall, HOA Vice President. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Glenn, the same man who'd shown up looking scared, pretending to be on my side. The same man who had warned me about Karen. The same man who had given me those official county boundary maps. It all clicked. He wasn't just trying to calm things down. He was trying to cover his tracks. I dropped the papers, breathing hard. Max barked from the porch, growling toward the street. I turned just in time to see headlights sweeping across the trees. Another car was pulling up, slow, cautious, like whoever it was didn't want to be seen. I switched off the flashlight and ducked behind the shed. The car door opened. I recognized that voice instantly. "Ben?" Glenn called out softly. "You out here?" I didn't answer. I watched as he stepped out, glancing around nervously, clutching something in his hand. A stack of envelopes. "Ben, listen. I know you found the papers," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "I can explain. You don't understand how deep this goes." I stepped out slowly from the shadows. "Try me." He jumped, eyes wide. "Geez, don't sneak up on me like that." "Start talking," I said flatly. He ran a hand through his hair. "Okay, yes, the contract was real. Redstone approached the HOA months ago about expanding the neighborhood's park trail. They offered us money, good money, for an easement through your property. But you wouldn't sell, and Karen insisted she could fix it. She told us you'd built past your line." "So you signed off on a deal involving my land?" I said, stepping closer. "I didn't know," he stammered. "She showed us survey papers. Fake ones, I realize that now. But she said she'd handle the county paperwork. By the time I found out, it was too late. Redstone had already cut the check to the HOA. I stared at him, disbelief turning to anger. "You took money for something that didn't belong to you." He swallowed. "We thought it was legit. The HOA treasurer deposited it in the improvement fund. I swear I didn't know she forged your documents." I clenched my fists. "You didn't want to know, you just wanted the money." He looked down, ashamed. "You're right." I took a step forward. "And what's with the envelopes? Planning to destroy evidence?" He hesitated, then held them out. "No, these are the rest of the files. I was going to turn them into the county before Karen did something worse." Before I could respond, Max started barking again, louder, more frantic this time. I turned toward the road. Another car was coming, but this one wasn't moving slowly. It was speeding straight toward us, headlights blinding. Glenn froze. "Is that?" He didn't finish. The car screeched to a stop a few feet from the fence, tires spitting gravel. The door flew open. Karen stepped out. Her hair was a mess, eyes wild, face pale. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "You think you can steal from me, Glenn?" she screamed. "You think you can just hand my project over to him?" Glenn raised his hands. "Karen, please, calm down. You're making it worse." She pointed at him, shaking. "You betrayed me. You were supposed to protect the HOA." Then she turned her gaze on me. "And you, this is all your fault. If you'd just followed the rules, none of this would have happened." "Karen," I said carefully, "you forged documents and sold land that wasn't yours. You need to stop." She laughed, a sharp, broken laugh. "Stop? I tried to do something good. I tried to make this neighborhood better. And what do I get? Lawsuits? Police? People treating me like I'm crazy?" Her voice cracked, tears glinting in the corner of her eyes. "You ruined everything." Then I saw it. The glint of metal in her hand. A hammer. She must have grabbed it from the front seat of her car. Karen, put that down, Glenn said quietly, stepping toward her. Stay back, she screamed. For a moment, none of us moved. The only sound was the wind and the distant hum of cicadas. Then Glenn took another cautious step. Karen, listen to me. You don't have to. She swung the hammer. It missed his head by inches, slamming into the fence post with a dull crack. Glenn stumbled backward, tripping over the gravel. Karen, stop, I shouted, running toward her. She turned toward me, eyes blazing. You took my life from me. Before she could swing again, Max lunged forward, barking furiously. The sudden noise startled her enough for me to grab her wrist. The hammer clattered to the ground. She tried to pull away, but I held firm. It's over, Karen. No, she screamed. You don't get it. They'll come after all of us now. Who? I asked, panting. She froze, staring at me with something like fear in her eyes. Redstone, she whispered. You think I did this alone? You think they'll let it end like this? That's when we heard it. The sound of another car engine, louder, heavier, coming fast. Glenn's face went pale. That's not the police, he said softly. Karen looked at the road, trembling. They're here. Headlights flooded the yard again, brighter than before. The car didn't stop at the gate this time. It rolled closer, slow and menacing. Karen's voice dropped to a whisper. You have no idea what you've started. The car stopped, engine idling. The driver's door opened and a tall man stepped out, suit, sunglasses, calm expression. He looked from Karen to me to Glenn, then said in a voice that sent chills down my spine, Looks like we all have something to talk about. The man's voice carried through the cool night air, steady and low. The kind of voice that makes your chest tighten before your brain even knows why. He wasn't yelling. He didn't have to. There was authority in every word. He stepped closer, his polished shoes crunching the gravel. The SUV's headlights cast his shadow long across the yard, swallowing the space between us. Mr. Walker, he said, looking directly at me, I assume you're the property owner. I didn't answer right away. Max stood in front of me, growling quietly, his fur bristling. Glenn shifted nervously beside me, whispering, Ben, don't say anything. The man tilted his head slightly. No need to be afraid. My name's Raymond Cole. I represent Redstone Development. Karen flinched like the sound of that name hurt. She took a shaky step back, eyes darting toward the woods behind my property. I don't know anything, she blurted. I told you I couldn't finish it. You said it was handled. Raymond turned his head toward her, calm as ever. You were paid to make the problem go away, Mrs. Bryant. Instead, you made it worse. Wait a minute, I said, stepping forward. You're the ones who hired her to forge documents? To steal my land? He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Let's not use words like steal. We were in negotiations to acquire community parcels for redevelopment. Mrs. Bryant was overly ambitious in facilitating the process. Glenn spoke up, voice trembling. This isn't what the HOA agreed to. You tricked us. Raymond turned to him, the smile fading. On the contrary, Mr. Marshall, you signed a legally binding partnership memo. We've already invested resources based on that agreement. If this situation continues, we'll pursue damages against every board member involved. Glenn went pale. You can't. Oh, we can, Raymond said smoothly. And we will. He looked back at me. Now, Mr. Walker, I understand this has been unpleasant for you. The easiest solution here is for you to sell. Redstone is prepared to make a generous offer. Well above market value. It's a clean way out. No more drama, no more police, no more late-night visitors. The way he said that last part sent a chill down my spine. I stared at him, then at Karen, who was now visibly shaking. So that's what all this was about, I said slowly. You sent her after me, to make me give up my land. Raymond didn't deny it. She was supposed to handle the negotiations quietly. Unfortunately, she let personal emotions get in the way. Karen's voice cracked. You said you'd protect me. Raymond's expression didn't change. We protect our interests. You stopped being one the moment you drew police attention. Karen stumbled backward, her breathing shallow. You can't just... Raymond lifted his hand slightly and one of the SUV doors opened. Another man stepped out. Bigger. Silent. He stood by the car, arms crossed. That's when I realized this wasn't just a business conversation. Raymond took a step closer. I'll make this simple. You sell the property within 72 hours, or Redstone files a civil suit that will bury you in court fees. We'll claim boundary confusion, breach of easement rights, whatever we need. We win either way. I could feel the anger rising inside me, but I kept my voice calm. You're threatening me. He smiled faintly again. No, I'm offering you an exit. Glenn whispered. Ben, don't agree to anything. They're bluffing. Raymond turned his gaze to Glenn. You should be careful, Mr. Marshall. You're already implicated in falsifying documents. It would be unfortunate if that paperwork found its way to the county prosecutor. Glenn's face drained of color. You wouldn't. Raymond shrugged. I don't need to. Someone else will. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the SUV's engine and the rhythmic chirping of crickets in the trees. Then Karen broke the silence. You're all liars, she screamed. You used me. I did everything you asked, and now you're turning on me. She lunged toward Raymond, hands shaking, tears streaking down her face. The larger man moved instantly, stepping between them. Karen stumbled back, sobbing. I'm not crazy. You made me do this. You made me. Raymond didn't even look at her. He adjusted his jacket, straightened his tie, and turned back to me. You have until Monday. We'll be in touch. He nodded to his driver. The SUV's headlights brightened, blinding us for a moment before the engine revved and they pulled away, gravel spitting under the tires. The silence that followed was deafening. Karen fell to her knees, sobbing into her hands. I didn't want this, she whispered. I just wanted to be respected. Glenn stared after the car, his voice barely audible. We're in serious trouble, Ben. Redstone's dangerous. They've done this before. I looked down at Karen, then at the torn documents scattered in the dirt, the broken signpost lying where it all started. Not this time, I said quietly. They picked the wrong person to mess with. Karen looked up, her face streaked with tears. You can't fight them, she said softly. They own everything. I stared back at her. Maybe. But they don't own me. That night, I gathered every document, every photo, every video file I had. I copied it all onto 3 separate drives and hid them in different places around the house. If Redstone thought they could scare me off my land, they were about to learn how stubborn I could be. But as I locked the door and turned off the porch light, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched again. Across the road just beyond the tree line, a faint red light blinked, steady, rhythmic, like the glow of a camera lens. Someone was still recording. The red light blinked again through the trees, steady and unblinking like an eye watching me breathe. I stood there on my porch, frozen, every instinct screaming that someone was still out there. Max growled low, his gaze locked on the dark patch between the oaks. When I took a cautious step forward, the light vanished. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house made my pulse jump. I kept replaying Raymond's words, you have 72 hours. Redstone wasn't bluffing. They had money, lawyers, and influence. People like that didn't lose easily. By morning, I decided I wasn't going to wait for them to make the next move. I called Officer Daniels, the one who'd handled the earlier reports, and told him everything. The forged documents, the night visit, the confrontation with Redstone. He didn't sound surprised. Redstone's been under quiet investigation, he said. Land grabbing, false easements, intimidation. But we haven't had proof. If what you're saying checks out, you might have just blown this case wide open. I emailed him copies of every file, including the Redstone contract with Glenn and Karen's name on it. When I hit send, it felt like a weight had lifted off my chest. But I knew this wasn't over. Around noon, Glenn showed up again, pale and shaken. They called me, he said. Raymond's people. They said if I don't retract my statement, they'll sue me personally for fraud. Let them, I said. I already turned everything over to the county. He stared at me speechless. You what? They can't silence everyone, Glenn. The police are watching them now. Before he could reply, we heard the sound of tires crunching up the road, fast. A black SUV, same as before, but this time there were 2 of them. Glenn's face drained of color. Oh no, he whispered. I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't move. The car stopped near the gate. The first door opened, and Raymond stepped out, looking more annoyed than angry. I warned you not to escalate this, he said. I warned you not to trespass, I replied. He gave a small smirk. You think the police scare us? They can't touch Redstone. You'll be bankrupt before a judge even sees your case. Something in me snapped then. Weeks of stress, fear, and anger boiled over. You think money makes you untouchable? I said. You forgot the part where you got caught threatening people on camera. His smirk faded. What camera? I pointed at the new security light above the porch. That one. Record straight to the cloud. Glenn looked stunned. You didn't tell me you had audio too. I didn't need to, I said quietly. Raymond's jaw clenched. You're bluffing. Before I could answer, another set of headlights appeared behind his SUVs, marked police cars this time. Sirens cut through the air as two cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. Officer Daniel stepped out, flanked by two deputies. Afternoon, gentlemen, he said calmly. Mr. Cole, you're under investigation for conspiracy to commit land fraud, falsifying public records, and harassment. Step away from the vehicle. For the first time, Raymond's confidence cracked. You can't prove anything. Daniels nodded toward me. Actually, we can. Mr. Walker's been very helpful. Two officers approached him, one reading his rights as they guided him toward the car. The larger man from before started to move, but a deputy raised his weapon. Don't. Raymond glared at me as they led him away. You think this ends here? We have partners everywhere. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said. But not today. Karen's car appeared down the road just as they were pulling him away. She stopped near the fence, stepping out slowly, eyes wide as she watched Raymond being taken into custody. Her face was a mixture of fear and relief. She walked toward me, voice shaking. They said they'd ruin me if I didn't help them. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't answer. I was too tired, too drained. For weeks I had seen her as the enemy, but now I realized she had been a pawn, pushed past her limits by people who preyed on her need for control and approval. Officer Daniels came over, his notebook in hand. We'll need her statement too, he said gently. Karen nodded, tears falling silently as she followed him toward the car. When the police finally left, the road grew quiet again. Glenn stayed behind, rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, he said softly. I just wanted to improve the neighborhood. Then start by telling the truth, I said. Clean up the HOA. Make sure nothing like this ever happens again. He nodded slowly. You have my word? I fixed the no trespassing sign the next day, straightened it, tightened every screw until it stood firm, gleaming in the sunlight. This time it wasn't just a warning to nosy neighbors. It was a reminder, to me, to Karen, to everyone, that peace needs protecting. For weeks afterward, the neighborhood was silent. No more violation notices. No more late-night arguments. Karen sold her house quietly and moved away. Glenn resigned from the board, leaving the HOA in new hands. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. No name, no return address. Inside was a single note that read, Redstone is gone, but others will come. Keep your papers safe. Some people never stop digging. There was no signature, but for the first time in months, I smiled, because this time, I was ready. As the sun set, I stood on my porch with Max lying beside me, the crickets singing again like nothing had ever happened. The air was calm, the sky wide and golden, and for the first time since all this began, I felt like my land truly belonged to me again. Where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments. And remember, when someone tells you what you can't do on your own property, always know your boundaries.